Okay, I'm Stephen Main. I'm standing here with Dean Paatch from Risk Metrics after the 4th Risk Metrics Annual Conference on Corporate Governance. We've had a fascinating day of interesting sessions. Dean, what was the highlight for you?
I think there are multiple highlights. I thought the first session on securities lending and short selling was fascinating in that it showed up how dysfunctional pricing is in the securities lending market, and that there's still a huge information asymmetry and disclosure asymmetry for the existing short selling. So something's got to be done there, and the government, I think the consensus of the conference is that the government solution doesn't really have it right yet. The apparatus is in place, but the solution isn't right yet.
And we had all the politicians here talking about the review of pay and the termination provisions. Pretty lively exchange of views, you think?
I think so. I mean, thankfully we had Bill Shorten supporting the government's position, but it was the first time that Chris Pearce has really committed that a binding vote on remuneration reports is Liberal Party policy. So I think that was significant, and the Greens' contribution, they are in the balance of power, so what they think on that issue will be critical.
And David Murray, as forthright as ever, the head of the Future Fund, on governance. I think some interesting revelations from him on why selecting directors is important for institutional investors.
Well, I think he made a great point, and that's a point that we've been saying for quite some time, and that is that the single most important thing that shareholders can do is get involved in the election or removal of non-executive directors. And his view is that that really is the heart of corporate governance. So I thought that was great to actually hear from someone so senior that actually is a major issue in Australia.
And we had the CEO of Computershare in a session after lunch about the corporate proxy voting system in Australia. Fair to say a long way to go to get to a best practice in that sector?
That's right, but there's some encouraging signs, and I think we've got to focus on the solutions. There was a consensus at the conference that the Australian system is really full of holes and that votes are going missing. AMP released its annual survey of corporate governance today that confirmed that still on average 4 to 5% of votes are going missing. Well, that's not good enough, and the discussion today was about some solutions. So I hope there's some renewed impetus that the industry will move to plug those holes.
And finally, we had your colleague Martin Lawrence revealing some research you've done ranking non-executive director performance based on total shareholder return they've delivered over a 7-year period. Very interesting to see the names in your best performing list. Do you think this will be a useful way to get a better line of sight on how NEDs are performing?
Well, it's got to be better than our current basis. The current basis is that we assume that everyone is performing the same, and that's clearly ridiculous. The average non-executive director gets 96% of the vote. Now that just doesn't stack up to reality. So what our methodology does, I think will be very useful in identifying the laggards, the serial underperformers, people who across multiple boards over a long period of time are destroying shareholder value. We don't think the methodology is perfect, but we're determined to challenge our thinking that non-executives just should be re-elected by ticking the box, and that's just not what we're about. So it's a start. The methodology has still got some holes in it, but we're starting the conversation, so I think that's a good thing.
Dean Paatch from Risk Metrics, thanks very much for speaking to the Main Report. And of course, we'll be watching how Risk Metrics advises their clients to vote on some of the big AGMs coming up, such as Rio Tinto, AMP, Westfield, and many others. Over and out.